In this video, we'll create a double jump with an animation. Right now, our player can move and can jump, but if you try to jump again in the air, nothing happens. So what we want to do now is to allow the player one extra jump while the player is still airborne, and then play a separate animation for that second jump. The basic idea for this is very simple. We need a way to keep track of how many jumps the player has left. Whenever the player lands on the ground, we reset that value, and every time the player jumps, we decrease it. So to do this, I'm going to head into my player controller script, and here I'm going to create two variables. I'm going to create one serialized field, which will be a private int called amount of jumps. I will set this to 2 for now, and I will also create a private int, which will be called jumps remaining. Amount of jumps defines how many jumps the player gets in total, and jumps remaining keeps track of how many jumps are left. Firstly, let's set this up so that the amount of jumps remaining is reset to 2 every time we land on the ground. I'm going to scroll down to my onJump method, and right underneath that, I'm going to create a new method, private void reset jumps. And this will simply check that if the player is grounded, then we will set the jumps remaining to be equal to amount of jumps. So basically setting the jumps we have remaining to our total amount of jumps, which is currently 2. We also need to update our onJump method. Right now, it only checks if the player is grounded, and if the player is grounded, we can jump. Therefore, we can only jump when we are on the ground, and we can't double jump when we are in the air. So instead of checking if is grounded, we need to check that if jumps remaining is greater than 0. And if our jumps remaining is greater than 0, then we can jump. But we also need to decrease that value. So every time that we jump, we want our jumps remaining to decrease by 1. We also need to call our reset jumps method. In our update loop, we are already checking if we are grounded, so it would make sense to do it here. So I will call my reset jumps method in my update loop. We will save the script, and now when we play our game, you would be tempted to think that this would work. And as a matter of fact, if I press my jump button twice, we can double jump, but actually we can also triple jump. The reason why we can triple jump is that if you go to our ground check game object to check whether the player is on the ground or not, as you can see, when we jump, the ground check is still hitting the platform, and therefore our number of jumps instantly resets. So this will give us a total of 3 jumps. What you can do is place the ground check very intricately so it releases the ground the very first frame we jump, but we can also do this in a much easier and, let's say, more hacky way. If we go back to our player controller script, we can just change the amount of jumps to 1. We can save that, and since it's a serialized field, it will be saved in the Unity editor. So we also need to go to our player game object, find our player controller script, and change the amount of jumps to 1 here as well. So now when we try to jump, our jumps are instantly reset to 1, therefore giving us 1 jump while we are still in the air, and now we can double jump. So now our double jump gameplay works, but visually it still looks the same as a normal jump. So let's try to create a separate animation for this. Firstly, I will go to my assets folder, and in my animations folder, I will create a new animation clip. I will right click, go to create animation, and create an animation clip. I will call it double jump, and I will drag this into my animator window. Now we can set up the animation. I will go to my imported assets, and for the Ninja Frog character, we have this set of frames called double jump. I will expand this, go to my animation window. In the drop down menu, I will switch from my current idle animation to double jump. I will set the sample rate to 20, and I will highlight all of the frames from the double jump animation and drag into my animation window. And if we play this, you can see it makes a flip. So now that we have our animation set up, we can start to create transitions for it. For this transition, I will use a new parameter, which will be a trigger. I will call it double jump. And for the transitions, I will create one transition from jump to double jump and one back from double jump to jump. For the first transition from jump to double jump, I will just create one condition, which will be the double jump trigger. I will also remove the exit time and set the transition duration to 0. And for the transition from double jump back to jump, we don't need any conditions, as we just want the double jump to play once, then go back to our original jump animation, and therefore we will keep an exit time, so we don't need to set a condition. Because to trigger a transition, you either need exit time or a condition. So now that we've set up animation clips and our animation controller, the last thing we need to do is go to our player controller script, and in our onJump method, right now we're only checking if the player has any jumps remaining, but inside that if statement, we also need to check that if the player is not grounded, so exclamation mark is grounded, and inside that if statement, we want to access our player animator variable dot set trigger, and then the name of our trigger, so double jump. So if the player tries to jump and is able to jump because the jumps remaining is still greater than 0, and if the player is not grounded, then we want to trigger the double jump animation. Otherwise, if the player is grounded and tries to jump, then we will just do a regular jump. We will save the script, and now when we try to run our game, we jump. That works normally, but when we double jump, it triggers the double jump animation and goes straight back into a jump animation. Well done on this video. In the next video, we'll add tiles and tile maps to our platformer and start building our level. But until then, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.